Hello there, Geek Collective, and welcome to Geeks Plus Comics, where we are more than just your average geeks. I am here with another amazing episode of Let's Talk Comics. I know you just had one earlier this week, but we have a very special guest here that I just had to get in as an extra episode for you all this week. And I am joined by comic book creator, comic book writer, Jason Heriford. Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you for being able to join us on such short notice. I think we only started messaging a few days ago, and we were able to kind of get this set up. So I'm glad we were able to talk.
Awesome. For sure, absolutely, really cool.
So you're on here today because we're going to be talking about your brand new comic that is currently on Kickstarter, which if anyone wants to check out the link for that, and I'll say it throughout this show down below, there will be a link to the Kickstarter. Go and check it out. But we are looking at the Adarvaan, which I'm super excited to talk about this. When you reached out to us, which thank you for reaching out to us regarding this, it was just a really amazing concept and story. And it's yeah, this is definitely something that really grabbed my attention and for multiple ways, and I'll definitely get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
But before we delve into the comic itself, I want to definitely talk to you and let our viewers know a little bit about yourself, Jason. So give us a little bit about yourself, a bit about your background, and how did you get into the world of comics?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a Midwest kid, right? Born in Kansas City and then Austin, Texas. So I've either been in Kansas City or Austin, Texas, or somewhere close by my whole life. So wide open spaces, lots of wind. But it's good. It's good. Love it out here. Background in education, right? I actually have been, in teaching and stuff like that, but I've been a writer my whole life, just in some form or fashion. Comics have always been a part of my life. I think I traded for the, what is it, 173? I don't know. I traded like second grade. I traded a buddy at school, right, for the Spider-Man. It was the Spider-Man and the Punisher versus the Hitman. It's the Statue of Liberty, right? And the Punisher's like holding on or something.
Yeah. Classic one.
Yeah, that was, and then I had this friend Ricky, right, and he lived in this old farmhouse with his dad out. It was just him and his dad on this big old farmhouse. It's like a scene for a horror movie, right? But upstairs there was this room, and it was just the only thing in this room was his dad had these boxes of comics, right, that were in the middle of the room, but had like broken down and torn open, through the years. So we would, that was Ricky's house, we'd go in this room and we'd just be like around this mound of old comic books, right?
That's like the promised land as a kid. That's the treasure trove right there to get into.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. And then and I was an X-Men kid, right? I was a kid of the 80s. So getting mom to take me up to the comic book store at the mall so I could get the new X-Men books. That was always
big question. Who was your favorite X-Man? Who's your favorite?
I'm an 80. You know who it is when you're born in the 80s. It's Wolverine, right? It's the Uncanny X-Men. They had but Nightcrawler. I loved them all. Nightcrawler, Colossus. Yeah. I was a Longshot fan there for a while.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna say Longshot's a more unusual one to hear, but yeah. I was the same. Grew up loving Wolverine, although I started getting a real love for Nightcrawler as well. He's probably still to this day, he's probably one of my favorite X-Men, if not my ultimate favorite.
He's classic. Yeah, the 90s cartoon with Nightcrawler. That was always is just cool stuff they did in the 90s there with some of those cartoons. So got in DC later, college years and Kingdom Come, of course, came out. And, that was that changed everything, right?
That was a massive one to get into. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a great book. And writing wise, I always wanted. I studied film for a long time, and just was able to work on some film sets, just independent stuff, and got into doing some film schools, and would play with writing film scripts quite a bit, and rewarding. But there's there's so many people involved, right, in making something like that come to life, and I think I was reading Somehow it's just the transition, the jump from film to comics just made sense.
Yeah. I will say,
You
like,
know,
you saying it is a really interesting thing. I'm starting to notice it as a more reoccurring story now with the more creators I
yeah,
talk with, that so many like were fans of comics or wanting to get into comics that also started getting into film and script writing and TV and different stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
there's definitely a correlation between it. I've seen it a few times now with people we've talked with.
And it's interesting because I found that I had to think harder writing a comic script because it's easy to say, oh, he goes out and he walks down and whatever, but to capture that single image, right?
Yeah.
And what matters in that single image and still have this grandiose type, kind of a story. Like it's just it was a different experience. And then being able to work with the creative team so closely, that it's just you and a couple of guys turning it into the finished product. It's that's really exhilarating. That's really a cool. It's one of the things that makes a comic so cool, right? So
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And yeah, I never even thought about that aspect of it. Like the writing the comic and writing that comic script just being so much harder than writing like a film or a TV script or even an animation script, because like you don't have the movement and the flow of something to work with. You're like, I've got a single image to tell a part of the story,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah.
sometimes it's a major part of the story, and like how do I convey everything and get just that right look to it, and it is a challenging thing to really do.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course the artists
Oh
bring
yeah.
what they can capture there, right? And the collaboration is super cool, right? It's cool to write it and then they interpret it and so yeah, it's an awesome part of the medium. So, but yeah,
Absolutely.
that's it. So
Absolutely. That's awesome. So you got into wanting to do wanting to do film, wanting to do all of that, kind of transitioned into doing comic books. Um, where did the original idea for this book come from? Because the
so it's
Adarvaan, or do you want to talk a little bit about what the Adarvaan is first, and then we can delve into like where the idea came
well, now
from
I can
more?
tell you, we'll back way up because it wasn't the Adarvaan at first. It
Hmm.
was um, that kind of came a little bit later. I when I the story actually goes back to my college days, right? When I was
Okay.
began writing and just playing around, and I always had this. For some reason, I remember at a young age, I was fascinated with this idea of. It started with like Noah's Ark, right?
Okay.
And this idea had this image of like this boat on this hill, right, where the rain's coming down, and it's like at the end when the rain's coming down and it's closed, and you have these masses of people trying to get and like get into the yard, right? And yes, one man and his family, and the door's shut, right? Or maybe the door's not shut yet, right? But they're sitting there waiting, and I always imagined that like this angel comes to shut the door of the ark, right? Like it's this miraculously sealed door and
Hmm.
whatever. And this angel that, somehow arrives on the scene. He walks up the hill or whatever and he shuts the door. But what would be going through the mind of this guy to like there's all these people here that he's condemning to death, so to speak. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's and it was just this to me this very poignant moment of him closing the door and condemning them all to die, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this I kind of wrote this short story in college, and it was like this, as mob trying to get, like a mob trying to get to safety, right? A flood or whatever, and this woman and her young child who can't make it up the hill. They keep getting knocked down and trampled, and he walks by and just like whispers them to sleep, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's just that act of mercy in the midst of what else and what
Yeah.
and is and where's the mercy and where's the judgment and this that whole piece of that story is kind of where it started and it I wrote different iterations of it over time of more of this kind of angel who was traveling through essentially all of history, right? That he would just show up at different moments and have this struggle of what he was there to do and the struggle within himself, right? Of what that meant, because there's always two sides, and there's justice, and then there's mercy, and how that all played out. Um, so that's where the original idea of it all came from, you know. And then kind of when I started reworking it, it became kind of a buddies story,
Hmm.
right? It's like, okay, so what if there's two of them? And what if one of them is like has no problem, like one of them is a take orders kind of military guy, so does he's a soldier, you know what I mean? In fact,
Yeah.
that's what the two angels in the book, their names are Good and Bakesh, right? And these there's I kind of I am no linguist, you know. It's like you get an idea and you start googling stuff.
Yeah.
So the Adarvaan's Persian, their names are Persian, but you know, I'm not making any haughty claims. It's just worked out. But Good means warrior in Persian, and Bakesh means seeker in Persian, right? And
Oh,
these
that's
are kind of the
awesome.
two different sides of this coin, that it's like they have a mission throughout history that we're beginning, you know, here with them, kind of at the beginning of the world, and there's two different sides to that coin. So instead of one guy and his struggle, it's these two guys and how they kind of, you know, work with each other. The Adarvaan, where that means it's fire protectors. And if anybody listening to this understands and knows anything about Persian, then please forgive me and know I'm just making stuff up because it sounds cool and it like it had a meaning, you know what I mean? But I'm not making any claims.
We're gonna start
But
getting
I
comments
believe
down
it's
below. You're like one of those guys that gets
that's
like
right.
the Asian symbol tattoo, and it's not at all what he thinks it means, sort of
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. Oh no, it's but like fire warriors, protectors kind of thing, right? And of course that idea of Persian being a very old language
Yeah.
and probably came out of other languages and right. So anyways, that's kind of where that came from, and it just developed in a kind of a different kind of a story, right? A buddy's story at the beginning of the world, right?
Even
and
just
and there's
the starting of that though is like I apologize if I start going off on a tangent. Just stop me because I've this is completely up my alley. Like, because
yeah,
looking at the idea of biblical stories, like I grew up in the church. I grew up as a Christian. I've
yeah,
been all my life as a Christian, but I have always loved mythos and lore and all this different stuff. So to think of biblical sort of stuff in that frame of mind is completely up my alley. So the prospect of like you saying that, like, well, what if you know, like the idea of an angel closing Noah's Ark door, you know, the
yeah,
door of the Ark. I'm like, that's a very held belief because it's believed that it was, you know, sealed by God, that people couldn't get in. So yeah, an angel doing that would make sense. But it's like, but what's going through that angel's mind? And just the prospect of that, well, it wouldn't just be like a stony faced, I'm not going to do anything, because angels have been shown to fall at this point already. They've been shown to have free
all right,
will. So what
yeah,
would be going through their mind? What would their thought process be? And like, what would be happening? And I'm like, oh, that's such an intriguing concept in itself. And I'm like, and it's
yeah,
just such a cool idea. Like to think of like, okay, well, what can we do with that? Can we play with that? Can we mold this? And you've almost taken that idea and like the thing I completely popped into my head when you're talking about like the two angels going through history. The first thing that popped into my head, to be completely honest, was Good Omens.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Was
yeah,
thinking of
yeah,
that sort of idea of like just them at different
yeah.
points in history, how they pop up together. And I'm like, it was that sort of idea of like this like buddy cop duo sort of thing. And I'm like,
Right.
this is such an interesting
Yeah.
concept.
Well, one of the things, you know, you hate saying it's like this meets this, right? But it's
Uh-huh.
one of the things that I'm going to say it now, right? But it's I always kind of thought of as it's kind of like Conan meets Sandman. You know what I mean? It's that
Mm,
it's got that Conan-esque kind of very, you know, it's barbaric, it's monsters, there's swords, there's,
yeah.
you know, it's just a wasteland, you know. And there's magic and all these things, but then there's the Sandman aspect of Good Omens, right? It's a transcendence of time and place.
Yeah.
You know, a there's something bigger going on. You have a guy that walks down the street with a mother and her child, right? And then at the same time, then goes and talking to, you know, powers and principalities in the beginning of the earth, and right, and this interaction between two spaces, that are both very personal but vastly different, you know. And so this it has an element of that to it, right? It can play in both spaces, which is kind of exciting to me. Um,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. I think it's a really intriguing concept that you've fell upon with this. Um,
Well, yeah, I got to give credit. You know what I mean? It's it's Genesis 6. There's the whole, if you can go look it up, right? But it's because I started at the ark, is where that was, but it became, this story takes place way before that.
yeah.
It's in this gap
Well,
of course,
that was kind of the
yeah,
next question for it then. So you've got this concept of the angels of Gud and Bakesh, who are, and you've got your starting point of where you've kind of started building this from is the ark and the flood happening and what would they be going through in this moment. But then, what was the idea then to go earlier than that? Because the period that this is set is, if anyone doesn't understand the concepts, like when if I start going about, Christianese here with some of my stuff, then apologies. But from the fall of man, from Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the garden and getting kicked out into the world, so they're out of Eden, through to Noah and the building of the ark and the flood. This period is not talked about greatly.
yeah,
Like you hear about Cain and Abel and all that sort of stuff, and then it's like Noah. But there
right,
is other stuff mentioned, and there's plenty of like theoretical stuff out there about what that era looked like.
yeah,
So, what
yeah.
made you want to delve into that with this?
It's always been fascinating to me, you know, it's funny when you're saying that a minute ago. There's a line. I used to tell my I used to teach history forever, and there's that movie Big Fish. You've
Mm,
seen, I don't know if you remember that. And there's a line in that movie where the dad says at the dinner table, he says, "You don't talk religion or politics at the dinner table."
yeah,
That's rude. Which I get it, but I used to always tell my students, I'm like, but that's where the fun is. I mean, that's where we can really have a lot of fun and disagree and argue and get our dander up, right? That's the stuff
yeah,
we're talking about. So anyway, but the um you know within that realm of, like I was talking about the whole arc thing, I also had this. I always wanted to write a movie. I don't, I can't get all this stuff away, but it's like, what if the world had advanced further, before the arc than we even to where we are today, right? And there's elements that we see of this kind of that come up in this story. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but um, this concept of lost, page lost to history, right?
yeah.
And in between of not knowing what happened. That just, as I played around with that got really fascinating. And there's this Genesis chapter 6 has this verse that it gets a lot of controversy if you ever talk about it. You were talking about being raised in church. They don't like to talk about this one at Sunday school, right? But it says the sons of God came down to earth and lay
Yeah.
with the daughters of men, right? And
That
took
was the
them as
line that made
wives.
me want to have this conversation with you. And it was set in
Right.
this era. That was the verse that hit my head right away. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's touching on that, the verse that nobody touches.
They gave birth to the Nephilim, right? To the sons of God, to the heroes of renown, those who did great deeds. And great deeds doesn't always mean good deeds,
No.
right?
For anyone who's not
So,
sure about this stuff, there are a lot of theories out there around this verse that this is where a lot of the historical legends of mythos and monsters and stuff come from, is that fallen angels laid with human women and they gave birth to these heroes and these monsters and these creatures and these things. All happened in this era because
yeah,
there was no law. Essentially, this was just happening out there, and that's where a lot of this came from. And that's where you, even through like later on in the Old Testament, the Bible, when it talks about the races of giants and stuff, that they
yeah,
came from a descendant of them because that was part of it. And like, nobody talks about this stuff, and I'm like, this is up there with like Behemoth and Leviathan for me in the Old Testament. I'm like, no, this is stuff that I
right.
want to talk about. This is the stuff I
Okay, that's
love.
cool.
This is the stuff I want to hear about. Like, wait a minute, this sounds
Right.
awesome. Like,
Yeah.
what, there's a chance these monsters might have actually existed? Like, why don't we talk about that? That sounds great.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's, and there's one thing with then these mutant, hybrid bloodlines, right? And then, but, but they also shared knowledge, right?
Mm.
And technologies and magic and all like, right? It's just, so that's when we get into, and the little preview, and you can see it on the, the Kickstarter page and
Yeah.
all, and you have these
Go check the
mutant
Kickstarter.
creatures.
Go look at it right
That's
now.
right.
Pull it
That's
up in
right.
another tab.
Uh,
You can listen to us while you're looking at it. Go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And mutants and witches and, all kinds of crazy stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So you obviously wanted to delve into this verse in this kind of era. But like you said, this is a
Right.
very controversial thing to talk about. This is something the church doesn't talk about. A lot of Christians aren't even aware of this verse and what
Yeah.
the connotations of it mean. What made you decide to do it, and was there any hesitation with you in doing it? Because part of you must have felt like there might be some pushback.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, I don't know how many of the people that would give pushback are comic readers, but it's like you must have worried that there
well,
might have
no,
been
I
some
mean,
sort of pushback on it.
right. Yeah. No, I mean, look, I think, we're here to make comic books are for fun. You know what I mean? And but I also come from a place of respect,
Hmm.
right, for that, and so for the the story and for scripture, and I do come from that background and that place of respect for faith, and so it was something that I wanted to be, I wanted to handle right. That may sound funny, but to some people, but I wanted to handle it right. But it's true of anything I write. I want what I write to be authentic,
Yeah,
um, and and I want it to be relevant, and I want it to matter, right? And so you have two aspects of this story. You do have the idea of it's, and it's a what if. You're right. I mean, that's the way you present it. What if? What if this happened? But from my perspective, I'm like, yeah, but what if it happened? Right? There's the what ifs, and then
yeah,
there's, yeah, but what if? Right? And so I do try to just present it in, I think it through, and I'm like, what am I saying here? Because I have my own theology, I have my own belief system, that while a comic book's a comic book and it doesn't have to have anything to do with that, I'm also of the standpoint that everything we put out there as a human being, and everything we put out there into the realm for people to pick up, I mean, we're telling them something. We're throwing
yeah.
ideas around. We're throwing, and people listen. And so we all have especially if you're gonna, any kind of book or anything you're gonna put out there, there's an element of being responsible with where you take it, even if you deal with something that's crazy or terrible subject matter, right? That it's how we present it matters, in my opinion. That's how I've always approached that kind of stuff. So I studied a lot. I did a lot of, there's a lot of research that's gone into this. Like, what do people think, and what's in the even slightly realm of the possible.
Yeah.
Like we talked about languages earlier, the concept of written language, and
Hmm.
of course, the Mesopotamians is where, with as the Sumerians. Again, I'm not a right. I'm not an expert. I've read a little, but I don't know. Is the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, are the same thing? But that right, that's where language started. Which that's what everything historically shows. But what
Yeah.
if? What if way, 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 way back somebody was writing stuff down, symbols on tablets, and
Yeah.
what if this guy named Noah took this stuff on the boat with him? You know what I mean? It's like, what if there are these stories and these lineages and this stuff? Yeah, I mean, there's been pushback, and there's, I was it's funny when you write a story like this with anything with God in it, there is an element of, some people aren't going to like it because God's in it. Other people aren't going to like it because it's not how they want God to be
Yeah.
in it. You're right. It's like, and to me, it's just about authenticity.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
amazing how
about,
you can somehow piss off both sides at the exact same
yeah,
time for like completely opposite
right,
reasons, and it's like you're just stuck in the middle with like, okay,
yeah, yeah. And
But
so, I just tried to do what I thought was the right thing to do,
yeah,
and be responsible with the material. So,
no,
even though it's,
absolutely, and I
you
think
know,
that's it because it would have been very easy for you just to go, you know what, screw it. It's a comic. It's like you said, it's for fun. We're meant to enjoy these things. We're meant to enjoy comic
yeah,
books. It's for fun. I can write what I want. This is my fantasy story that I'm putting out there. It just happens to be set in this period. If you're not happy
yeah,
with it, it's not real. But like the fact that you've taken the time of like even like the research in the language. Like I want to research the languages. I want to try and find
yeah,
something that fits in. Like what do the Persian words for warrior and the Persian words for seeker, so I can name the angels and like even the title of the book. I want to look up what it means and I want to find something that fits and try and make it fit together. And it's like is all of it going to be completely right? Possibly not. Some of it could be wrong, but I'm showing that I'm trying to make an effort to understand and be respectful and make it's what is it they usually describe the books as, like a historical fantasy. Like
yeah.
it's
I
based
mean,
on like historical elements. It's based in like
right,
using biblical texts and things from that era of like, but
yeah,
also creating a fictional story in that era. And it's like,
yeah.
but you're still trying to be respectful of it. And I think that's an awesome thing to do because it'd been very easy just to go, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to do my own thing. Um,
Do you know that show The Last Kingdom? Is that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you right? And it's this cool story about early English, which was a time where we don't have a lot of information. Dark Ages, we don't have a lot of stuff written down.
Yeah.
We know more, obviously we do. But you got this guy Uhtred, which is this really cool Viking dude, right? Half Viking, half Saxon, whatever. Anglo or he's English but. Uh, and somebody's going to say something about that because I know I got that wrong. But the point is, he's like this cool fictional character that all these stories around, and then a person that we know, oh, we know this guy. He walks in every now and then, right? And that's kind of the cool thing about that I wanted to do with this. And there might be some people that you've heard of, before that show up in even in the ancient stories, and then and then there's a possibility for well, and there's again, if you look at the Kickstarter page, you'll see there's a modern element to this story as well
Yeah.
too that unfolds. So
Hey there, Geek Collective. Did you know that Geeks Plus is also on Patreon? For as little as just $2 a month, you can also support us over on Patreon and get early access to all of our YouTube videos from Geeks Plus Comics, Geeks Plus Tabletop, and Geeks Plus Gaming, as well as a whole bunch of exclusive content specifically for our supporters over on Patreon, and early access to all the behind the scenes and ongoings with the company. So if you would like to check out all of that stuff and help support what we do here at Geeks Plus, we would greatly appreciate heading over to patreon.com/geeksplusmedia and supporting us over there. But that's all from me from now. You all have a good day, and let's get back into your video. That's actually a great time to kind of transition to that because I wanted to ask about that as well. And obviously, again, I don't want too many spoilers out there or anything for it, but
yeah,
can you tell us anything about that modern setting as well? Because like on the pages you get like a little view of some of the stuff that's going on, and like so you've got this historical element set way back when. But then what does the modern element add to the story, or can you give us any hints towards it?
well, essentially the idea is that we're dealing with with powers of great evil
Mm-hmm.
and then powers of good, right? You have these two angels, and then there's these great evils, and of course in the prehistory world, it's like hell on earth, right? I mean, hell
Mm-hmm.
literally after the fall, it's like the floodgates are opened and things got really, really bad,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we can talk about bad things today, and there's things that are messed up, and there's bad things today that are horrific. Yeah, but it's like why destroy the whole earth? That again, that idea of where's the and it's the idea of okay, there was a door left open, right? And things came through that weren't supposed to come through, right? And so you've got a hell on earth early on, but then you've got the idea is that there's this, this we'll call it an artifact, weapon, something of kind of great importance that gets that gets preserved, right? And then, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the future is still being sought after. And you have these dark forces that are, trying to find this weapon, if you will, right? And what's fascinating is I'm a big history buff.
Mm.
I love all kinds of history, and um, there's again going back, kind of Noah's Ark is kind of the anchor to all these stories, right? It's this, and you can go read all about it today. There's Mount Ararat is, people think Noah's Ark's up on Mount Ararat, but
Yeah.
there's this glacier, right, that you can't get around it. And then there's also the political climate that you can't go up there, and all these different things that have caused difficulty through the years. But you can go study. There's accounts of all throughout history, recent history, and then all the way back to this guy named Josephus wrote about the Jewish histories between, like, and there's the Old Testament stopped, and then there's 400 years, and the New Testament starts, and in between, there's this Jewish historian named Josephus. He talks about people going and getting stuff from the ark, right? Like tar and stuff in the mountains that they would use for make fires or whatever in this region. And then you have a Russian pilot that claimed in like the turn of the century that claims he saw it, right? And there's all this great historical stuff, and then we can make up whatever we want, comic books too, right? And
Yeah.
fill in the blanks. So anyways, yeah, but the idea is each issue will have this epilogue of sorts. So you have the story, because when I first wrote the thing, I was kind of going back and forth, like, this and this. You have the ancient history, and then we have a modern element, and um, and and it got convoluted. It
Mm.
got there's I saw it all, but there was a lot going on to keep up with, and so I've taken it and had basically you have the full story, and then you have a short little epilogue of what's kind of transpiring in the more recent past. It is something of a continuation of the story. So,
That's
uh,
awesome.
yeah,
It's a really cool
that's how.
element because it adds a whole new thing to it as well. Because it's one thing to tell a story in like that one time period, but then to like show like, well, hold on, this is kid lasting effects through the years. This is an ongoing thing. Like what happens back here is affected now, essentially modern era sort of time.
Yeah,
And it's like it's a really interesting thing to add to it because it gives a completely different twist on it because like even the description you sent me, like the Kickstarter is set in a biblical world meets like swords and sorcery, fantasy-esque stuff all mixed together, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what's this element? This is like
there's an airplane.
yeah, it's like this is
Yeah,
completely different, and it's like
yeah,
and speaking from my dungeon master D&D mindset, it's like well, you've got a world that's set up like this, and it's like, well, hold on, there's an element here. Well, wait, automatically, I'm like, why is that there? Why is this thing that's out of place? This section, this epilogue, is out of place next to everything else. Like, what does that mean? And it drives that intrigue to, well, we need to get answers to why this is here now.
yeah,
Why are we learning
right.
about this? What has this got to do with that period in history and the Adarvaan and the our angels doing their thing between the fall and the flood? Like, what does this have to do with that? And it just adds that new element to it, and I absolutely love it. I think it's a really intriguing thing to add, and especially to make it like an epilogue at the end of the issue. It's like just that little tease, that
Yeah.
little tidbit at the end.
Well, and the guy doing my artist on this, Nate Wells, he's just incredible. I mean, his what he does, and those 2 pages in the Kickstarter are black and white. I'm trying to keep
Mm.
my screen from messing up here. I don't know what's doing. Um,
Now you're good.
and
It's
there's
looking
a
good on our side.
Okay, cool. But there's this little piece of me that wants to keep it black and white, right? And I'm not gonna, because it looks Marcelo Maiello, he's doing the colors on this book, which he's incredible. On if you don't recognize the name, Marcelo's work. He did Noctura, Duck and Cover, Old Man Logan.
Oh
He did the
yeah.
first. Yeah, that I mean those that explosive dream world and Old Man Logan, right? That for with Jeff Lemire, he did the color for all of Jeff Lemire's books, and he's amazing. But
Dang, I was going to say, yeah, that's some fantastic work. I
yeah,
didn't recognize the name when you said it, but as soon as you start talking about his books, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know that. That's an awesome colorist. He's
yeah,
phenomenal.
he's amazing. He's amazing. I'm it's just amazing that he wants to work
I
on
was
this
going to say that's
book.
a hell of
And
a get for the book. That's a big
yeah,
get for it.
well, it was just this crazy way that I was able to get introduced to him and show him the stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, this is cool," and he's like, "I could do it. He's like, I don't want to commit because I got these other projects and I don't want to." And I'm like, "Look, we'll make it work. If the problem's timeline, we can push it a little bit.
I
We'll
was going to
make it
say that's
work."
like he says, yeah, I
So
want to work on it,
yeah,
but it's not fitting this schedule, and I'm like, how do I change my schedule to help you? Because this is if
yeah, well, he was, he's like, I got this project, and I don't want to. I already told them that, and I'm like, cool, do that. Well, I'll wait.
yeah,
You know,
I was going to say it's like you want to work in this book, like I will find a way to make it work. Absolutely, like
exactly,
it's
exactly. Well, so Steve Wands again, the guy doing letters, which both of these guys, Will Dennis, and Will Dennis is this incredible editor. He's at Vertigo, and
mm,
Scott Snyder, Jeff Lemire. He's like all my favorite books. Will Dennis has been the editor on, and he edited Old Man Logan, and he edited this book Ascender
oh
with Jeff
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Lemire and
yeah,
Saga, right?
yeah.
Which was just oh you but I also was able Marcelo introduced me to Steve, and he you would know his work too. He's doing letters on Minor Arcadia and some books for Distillery. He's doing a ton of stuff. He did some of the All In,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but he did the lettering for that Ascender series, right? And it's letters are one of those things, right? They always say if letters are done wrong, you know it. If they're
Yes.
done right, you maybe don't even notice them, right?
Yeah,
But he
we
has
literally say that
this,
all the time. It's like a good letterer, you'll
yeah.
never notice their work properly. A bad letterer, you will notice it right away. It's like
But
it's
but Steve's adds, I bet, a great letterer, right? I mean, it's this different element, this
yeah,
transcendence of how thought becomes and sound and the graphic elements of the lettering all becomes this web of story even within itself. It's just a whole art form all to itself. So
absolutely.
again, just to have the talent on this book I'm able to work with is just
I was gonna say
humbling
this is
and
a heck of
yeah,
a team you've got working on this book. Like it's
yeah.
phenomenal team that you've got working on this.
They're amazing. And Nate Wells, I started out talking about him. He's a guy just up the road from me here in Texas, and I found him just by chance and started messaging the guy like, "Hey, this is cool. We should talk." Right? And kind of a newcomer. He's Lawbringer, Heartland Blood was kind of a big book on Kickstarter a while back. 88 Days in Hell. He's done some, but he is just his style is just
Yeah,
blows me
and
away.
it's
So he's just getting started.
the
You're gonna see
artwork
a lot more.
looks really good. Like it needs to be honestly
Yeah,
praised. It looks phenomenal. Like again, guys, check out the link for the Kickstarter. All the pages that are up there will show off this amazing team, and they look amazing. The artwork is stunning for it, and
yeah.
it's always amazing
These
when you
guys are
find a
great.
great book that's on Kickstarter that's got phenomenal artwork. Because I've seen plenty of books on there where you look at the art and you're like, yeah, it's not
Yeah,
quite good. It's like I appreciate the effort, but it's like it needs a little tweaking, and then you find books and it's like, whoa, this is awesome. Like I'm so glad I stumbled across this, and Adarvaan is one of those books. Like this looks amazing.
oh, thank you. Yeah, they're amazing. These creators are just, like I said, I'm humbled to work with
Yeah,
these guys.
you've
They're amazing.
you've managed to compile this like all-star team pretty much. Like it's the phenomenal team you've got working with you on this book, and it's like I can't wait to see the finished product. I can't wait to see what it looks like and it's completed, because like it's going to be worth the wait. It
I appreciate
absolutely
it. Yeah,
is.
yeah, and it's a 12 issue arc. So right, we're starting out with issue one, but it's got these, it's one of those things where it's like I want so much You're right. It's like, but what about issue 4? You know, this is going to happen, and like I said, there's some things, there's some characters that might show up that'll surprise you that people kind of be familiar with them, but maybe in a little different way.
Well, I was going to
Um,
actually ask that. You've already kind of started asking. One of my next questions was going to be like, how long is this going to run? Because this is obviously like this is the beginning of it, and so it's a 12 issue series,
yeah,
a 12 issue
yeah.
run, and
So that this, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, and I was just going to ask, like, and just we've already talked about like the time jump for the epilogue of it. Is that something we're going to see throughout the books? Like, because you've talked about like these angels possibly being, through different points in history. Are we going to see it like? Is a chunk of it going to be set in the era that you've set it in, or are we going to see like further on in the Old Testament and then maybe into the New Testament and different periods, or is it mostly like this era and then the future?
Right. So, so the first, I had the, like I said, talking way back, but then the first rendition I had written of this story was more, it was more in the future. It was
Mm.
like beyond, like our future, like whatever, 500 years, down the road or something. And with flashbacks to things that happened, like in Nazi Germany or, the Civil War or, different, again, these different historical events that
Yeah.
occurred, and these guys were there. And then Noah's Ark, right, was one of those events, right, as it unfolded. But it has become the main arc is this story of before the flood, right? Of this
Hmm.
time period of these guys they've come back to, or, the Adarvaan are I'll give a little bit of more back. The Adarvaan are again, to stay safe. I made some stuff up because I didn't want to. If you start dealing with things that are too, you don't want to like start putting words in God's mouth or something like that, right?
No, it's like it's like it's one thing to get like certain people mad at you, but you start doing that, and like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, that's just going to cause a whole heap of issues. Like, we're
right.
not touching that.
Well, it's like this is a made up thing. That so what if? But that Adarvaan are like this. Race is the wrong word. It's like they're this segment of angels, right? So the idea is there were these angels called the Adarvan, and these are the last two of them, and they've come back to Earth for this specific purpose in this specific time, right? They have a task that they are there to fulfill, and so that's the initial arc of the story. The the epilogue, the modern version, is its own story, and I'm not saying they won't be a part of it and show up because after all, they are, immortal beings, right?
Yeah.
So they can show up later, but it'll have its own characters and kind of its own path that they are linked 100%, but a little different story. And then you never know what's going to happen. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, these guys, this 12 issue is one story, and they've got, a lifetime of stories that could be told about these two angels, and and as kind of I alluded to, I even have stories that were in the future, right? Because again, back to the original concept for my whole where this was all coming from was this angel that had conflict, you know, um, that this is my task, this is what I'm here to do, but why do I do this and not this, right? Or why do it's the whole why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do
Hmm.
I mean, it's or maybe it's the other way around. But the it's this idea of this angel that right in the beginning was this idea of did he feel conflict and what did he do with it and what if he
Yeah.
kept feeling it, right? And so then you have these two that might, again, this is future, like what if stories that could happen down the road as we deal with as human beings, how we process this stuff, what that looks like. So
No,
yeah, but it's
I think it's a really interesting, like, it's honestly a really cool idea. I love the fact that the stories are like going to be almost separate from each other, although connected. I think I do like that aspect of it. And it's really cool because it always opens up the door of like, if this is just a 12 issue run and that's where it ends, Awesome, you've told a complete story. But if ever down the line there's another story to hit a different time period, or to explore that future story, or to delve into something new, that opportunity is there,
Yeah.
because the angels are always there. And I love the concept of the angels. Like, I love that starting question of like an angel that shut the door to the ark, and what would be going through their mind, because and it's a concept of asking a question, because we don't know what angels think. We don't know what angels' minds are like. We don't know how they process things. But one thing that comics are meant to do as well is meant to make us think. They're meant to be fun, but they're also meant to be challenging and intriguing. And it's a very human emotion. Because it's very
Yeah.
easy for us to look, well, they shut the door, and it's like, that's because all these horrible, evil people were out here, and only, Noah was righteous. And I'm like, but stop for a moment and actually put yourself at the door of the ark, looking at these people not getting in. What would you legitimately feel in that moment? What would you legitimately go through? And it's emotions that people don't always allow themselves, especially within the church. We don't allow ourselves to
Yeah.
ask questions a lot, and we don't allow ourselves to feel things. And it's like, it's okay to ask. It's okay to question stuff. It's okay, because that's how we get a deeper understanding of things, is by asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a concept that is so human. And I love that you're exploring that from an angelic perspective, but very human emotions and very human questions.
Well, there's the extreme is always exciting, right?
Mm.
Of extremes, and of course, comics are, our comics handle extremes very well,
Oh
right?
yeah,
It's always pushing the envelope in this extreme, and so angels and demons are extremes, and we as humans, we tend to, see ourselves as these. Are we more complex? And sometimes it's easy to think, well, you see the guy here struggling with what to do in life, and you have an angel on this shoulder and a demon on this shoulder, right? And they're these extremes of total good and total right. But to your point, if you consider an eternal being, an immortal being that is interacting right with on Earth and all these things, and being tasked with, they're not robots, right? They have these thoughts,
yeah,
they have concept, they have will, they have, again, a warrior and a seeker, right? They're tasked with two different things. Good is the warrior, Bakesh is the seeker. Together, they make this kind of perfect kind of team. But they're the mindset with, I'm here to do exactly what, I'm a soldier, to carry out a soldier's orders and do it. And the seeker, I'm keeping my eyes to see what's happening, and to see beyond just that there's the warrior kind of mindset of following orders, and then there's the, you're keeping your eyes almost like a scout, right? Going out, kind of seeing what's out there, and having to be more, um, you know, can change course easier, right? These two guys with two different kind of mindsets and tasks, um, and that's going to manifest itself differently, as they go through these stories.
yeah,
But
absolutely. But it's really interesting. Like, I love it though. I love the humanizing element to it, because it gives us something to latch on to. And the weirdest like comparison came to my head there, especially like because I was thinking of the moment when you said like the angel shutting the door, and he's seeing all these people out there, and it's so easy for us to think of them being these horrible, evil people. But what about like the mother and child just trying to make their way up there, trying to survive? And the moment that flashed into my head was literally, to go complete sci-fi nerd for a minute, is Doctor Who.
yeah,
In the 50th anniversary, like when there's three of the Doctors together, and they're talking about the day that he destroys his home planet. And he asks his future self, and he says, "Did you ever count like how many children there were on Gallifrey the day that you destroyed it?" And it's like, up to that point, we'd always heard about him destroying the enemy, destroying the Daleks, and he had to sacrifice his people. And it's like, but in that moment, it all of a sudden made it more human,
yeah,
because it wasn't just like, oh, his race of people are going. It's like, no, individually, these people are going. Individually, I murdered all these children that day by the choice that I made. and it changed the complexity of everything. And it's almost that same element. It clicked in the same way for me of like, to stand there and close that and think you're all evil, horrible people, so you're going to be washed away and cleansed. And it's like, but can you really still see that in the same light if you're thinking about women and children trying to get away from the floodwaters and desperately crying out for
These are
help?
people of, they're just running for their lives. That's all they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like,
there's a, yeah.
And it adds a whole other element to process it with. And I think it adds a great humanity, and honestly, a great humanity that we need in the world today. Because it's so easy to see other people, like you talked about, as extremes. Even like you talked about, like the political stance and where do you stand politically. And it's like, the problem isn't that we have different political stances. The problem is that our political stances are so opposed to each other, and all we can do is look across and go, enemy. Death to my enemy. And it's like, whoa, wait, no, that's not what we're meant to do. Where's the humanity in the middle of finding a common ground to stand on and working together, regardless of what we believe? Is there a way to find a way to make it to work? And it's such a powerful message for the world today. And it's like, it's a really cool concept to see that played out in that way, to take such a foreign time that is so out there for us. It's, a story we grew up with. It's an era that we never hear about, even in church. But yet it's got such a human element to it that really speaks to the world even today. Yeah. I think you've managed to encapsulate a lot of stuff together in that, Jason, and it's really awesome to see. It really is.
Oh, thank you for saying that. It's cool. Yeah, I pepper it here and there, right, as I talk about the book and kind of on things. And, hope, to me, the message of the book is one of hope, right? I mean, it's the darkest of times. It's the bleakest of times. It's monsters and giants and witches and demons and dragons. And there's a lot of blood and things are going bad, but it's like, this tagline in there, it's like, even knee deep in mud and blood, right? Their message is one of hope, right? So that's kind of that theme that you're talking about there. It is extreme. Everything is extreme, but they're there for the purpose of hope. So
yes,
which is
all about hope.
It's what we need in the world today, right? That's what we need. So
maybe now as much as ever. Maybe now as much as back then. It's like we've always needed hope all the way back at the dawn of time, and we still need it today. Absolutely.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
That is awesome. But yeah, I think that's a good note to end on today, is the note of hope and the purpose of the book. Jason, this has been an absolute pleasure to sit and talk with you today. This has been an absolute blast to delve into this and to delve in the creative process of this. For all of the Geek Collective watching, remember, link for the Kickstarter is down below. Go and check this out for yourself. If you're not sure about it, it doesn't matter if you are a Christian or not. It doesn't matter if you are intrigued by the concepts or not. Go and give it a look. Just click on the link, go check it out for yourself and see if it's something you're interested in. I guarantee you'll be intrigued by it. There's enough there to grab your attention. If you're one of our fans on our channel, then there's probably something there that'll grab your attention.
I think that's my hope, that people just see it as, it's the angels and it's all, and God is, in the unit, but it's just, it's a story I think everybody can, especially if you like swords, you like Conan, Tolkien, stuff like that, right? I mean, that's kind of what I hope you can latch on to. So I appreciate you having me on, Cross. This has been really, really cool. Yeah. There's just a few days left on the Kickstarter. That is one of the things that, if you're intrigued,
for this dropping,
go check it out.
If you're watching this on the day the video drops, the Kickstarter only has a few days left. I believe less than a week at this point. It's So we're getting this video literally. The day that you're watching this is probably the day after we've recorded it on YouTube, but make sure you go check out the Kickstarter, go and back it and help it get to its goal, help it hit any stretch goals. Let's see if we can boost it up there and go and check out this amazing book. It's definitely one to check out, and coming from a place of like I said, a dungeon master who's all about the swords and sorcery stuff, it definitely tickles that itch, as well as a Christian itch, which I said to when we had like a while ago when we had Dr. Baron Bell on the show with his book Dominion. Of it's awesome to see Christian based comics that are actually good out there, because I grew up with so many of them that were not that good at all. So to see some that's like based in that Christianity and like, you know, but it's also telling a really good story, and like that's amazing. I'm so glad to see it, and I'm so excited to check out the full story when it drops.
Cool. Cool. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, this is good stuff. I like what you guys are doing. So thanks for having me on, Cross.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much, Jason. Go and check out Jason on all social media. I'll put his links down below as well, so you can go and follow him in his socials, because as he said, there's going to be 12 issues to this book, so you need to keep up to date for when the next issues start to drop. But that is it for us today. Thank you so much, folks, for hanging out with us and joining us for Let's Talk Comics. Hope you all have a great day, and remember, it is a good week to be a geek. Take care, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.